Yeah. Check your key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, folks, welcome to episode 8 of Unscripted Table Talk. Today we have a special guest in our studio, Mr. Allan Johnston.
Pleased to meet you. Literally 5 minutes ago. Well, like 20 minutes ago.
I know. So Allan is going to share his life experience with us. He's been through some stuff, substance abuse, various opioids, and different drugs. And he's here to share his experience with us. Tell us, obviously, the do's and don'ts.
Mostly don'ts.
Yeah. So, without further ado, we're going to start tonight's show. Folks, if it says we do the show every week, if it's something that you like, please share, subscribe, and enjoy the show for today. So, Allan, I'm going to start asking you some questions.
Go nuts, man.
First question. How did it all start?
That is a very, very, very long question.
Mm-hmm. And we got time. We got lots of time.
I'm of the opinion that most drug addiction is just symptoms of other untreated issues. A lot of insecurity for me. Like, everyone has a drug of choice for a reason. And I think it's because it fills in some emotional need that, for whatever reason, we're not meeting already. The first drug I absolutely loved was ecstasy, because, like, I remember taking it and going out on the dance floor and making out with a girl like 5 minutes later. And I was terrified of women. Okay. I still am to a certain extent. Like, and my friends would always make fun of me for having literally zero game. But, like, I would take that and I feel like I could connect with anybody in the room. And I would do that basically every weekend for about a year, sometimes during the week. It stopped working about 2 weeks in, because I would take it expecting, like, oh, I'll go out there and completely crush it on a dance floor, and nothing would happen. Yeah. So eventually I got bored of it, because you start having to take more and more of the ecstasy, and all that's really happening at that point is I'm getting really sweaty, sketchy, and wanting to make love to the floor, and that everything feels really fucking comfortable. So I went through a massive ecstasy phase, and that brought me till when I was out of school. And then I didn't really do many drugs other than, like, drink with friends, and was basically a normal human being for quite a long time. I started working at the Metro warehouse, and I got introduced to Percocets there, and I could take 2 or 3 of them, and suddenly I could work like 10 hours straight and just love it. It felt great. Work felt great.
On Percocets?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was really, really easy to justify, in that, like, I hated my job, but if I spent $10 on Percocets, I loved my job, and, like, do what you love, right? If I could work high, that was fucking great. And that is what I would do for years and years and years. It took a very long time to build up the kind of tolerance where it's like, wow, my life's kind of in ruins because I keep doing this, but it grows exponentially. I was married, and things got worse then, because, like, it wasn't a super great marriage, probably because I was a drug addict. When we did get married, I told her, like, hey, 2 things. I'm not going to stop doing drugs. I don't want to have kids. She tried to change both those things. Yeah. And I would start hiding him from him. And that's when the other aspect of opiates that's really great, in that you stop giving a shit about things that bother you. So I had this drug that would let me work endless hours, let me pay for it because I could now work endless hours, and would let me forget about how much I just didn't enjoy living, which was kind of great.
So did you have, like, suicidal thoughts?
No. The only time I ever debated killing myself was about 7 months ago, when things got really, 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 really bad. I was out of money, got dismissed from work because I left it in an ambulance. And at this point, I had switched to heroin because it's just way fucking cheaper. And at that point, why wouldn't I? Like really, there's not a reason not to not do heroin when your life is that fucked up, because you don't even care if you die or not. There was a bunch of other stuff that went down in my life, like my now ex-girlfriend was living with me because I set fire to her place with a cigarette butt.
Oh my God.
Well, I set fire to the outside of it. But I mean, when she has to get evicted because we woke up to everything being on fire, her landlords didn't take too kindly of that. And so she came and stayed with me. And when you're trying to hide a drug habit from somebody and they're living with you, it's actually surprisingly hard. I know, right? Shocking.
Yeah.
So that happened. I got dismissed from work because I was using every day.
Yeah.
At this point, I had actually stopped using to the same extent that I was, and that I no longer had any credit because I maxed it all and just ignored it.
Oh, so you basically use all your money to buy drugs then?
Oh, yeah. Oh. When I got married, I had like $13K in RSPs because I was saving up to get a house.
Yeah.
By 7 months ago, I'd cashed all that out and had about 10K owed on a line of credit and 13K on credit cards.
So what? So did you do a lot of drugs, or the drugs that you were doing are expensive?
Both.
Oh.
I wasn't doing a lot of drugs in the extent, like when I had unlimited credit, I was doing about 580s a day, which is $250 of oxycodone a day. When my credit got cut off, I was doing just as much as I could afford and still put on a normal front for my ex that like, oh no, I have money. It's just, I'm saving it for all sorts of other reasons, or I'm paying off all his debt. Cause I would tell her I used to have this massive drug problem because it went from being a $250 a day habit to a $50 a day habit. Cause that's all.
So at this point, did your day job subsidize, or did your day job actually pay?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like there was like unlimited overtime we could do. So I'd be like, oh, I could work 10 hours overtime. That's $400. That would cover my drugs for the week because I'd cut back to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But there would also be days where I would literally work 16 hours, or I would work the 8 hours overtime, work my regular shift, and the 8 hours overtime would allow me to be high for 2 or 3 days. And I would work the overtime. I would always say I would rather work 60 hours high than 40 hours sober. And that's generally what I did.
That's very interesting, man.
It's fucking horrific. But that was basically my life.
So, so you did opioids, and did you have like a favorite drug?
Oxycodone.
Okay. So
by a long shot. Like I tried morphine and hydromorphine. What would happen is like, it was enjoyable. I would lay in bed for like 3 hours being like, wow, everything's nice. But like oxycodone let me get shit done.
Yeah.
That's why I loved it so much. Cause like I'd always be very lazy and procrastinating on things. If there's something I needed to do, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. If I took oxy, I would do everything I needed to do. If I needed to go pick up new shoes, I would go get new shoes. Whereas normally I would just let them fall apart around my feet, as Kamal could probably attest to. He's seen my work boots. But
okay. So we got how, you mentioned to me earlier before we started, as a kid, you were diagnosed with ADD.
Yeah.
Do you think that had a spill off to doing drugs in the future? Or?
Yeah, but so does everything that happens to you in childhood. Like,
so describe your diagnosis with ADD and the medication that you got,
I don't remember it too well.
Yeah.
I think I was about 12 or 13. It was from like grade 2 to grade 5. And again, this is all pretty hazy to me because it was so far long ago.
Right.
I do remember the dose I was given on was an insane amount because I don't even know if it was a year or 2 years into it. I remember one night not sleeping and hearing voices and telling my mom about it. And we went to go talk to the doctor, and he's like, the dose you're on is insane. Like they had me on, I think it was 20 milligrams of Ritalin, and he cut me down to 5.
Okay.
Again, the details are very hazy, and I was generally more functional after that. But I do remember as a kid, when I would be on it, I'd be stoned out of my fucking mind. Like I wouldn't talk to anyone. Yeah, I would just walk around the playground and not speak to anybody. And I'm not sure how much that stunted my social skills, which definitely lends to a lot of drug use later on in life. Because you're like, oh shit, I can take ecstasy and connect with people. I can get drunk and connect with people. I'd be an asshole and I'd be sweating and I would look like a sketch bag, but at least I would be connecting with people. I don't know how much of the Ritalin or ADHD or being stoned out of my mind as a kid played into that.
So did your parents like have a say? Like your parents obviously noticed the symptoms of the prescription drugs you were on at that time. You were a kid, so their response of you at that time, when they give you these drugs, did they you said your doctor adjusted your dose to 5 milligrams from 20.
Yeah.
After he noticed, you guys noticed that you were, people were talking to you in sleep.
Wasn't people talking. I would just hear a voice in my head being like, bad things are going to happen. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But I do remember it terrified the fuck out of me.
Okay. So at that time then, like, was there like a counselor involved? Did you have a counselor?
Not that I can remember. I just told my mom that I was having like really, really terrible nightmares and hearing things that I couldn't sleep. And the doctor immediately dropped my dosage.
And were you okay after that? During that time of your childhood?
Again, this was my childhood. I don't think about this too much. I don't remember it too well.
No, I'm just trying to, try to put the pieces together. Like,
was told I was a lot more functional after that, but I don't really remember the difference. Yeah. And I think I just jumped off of it completely by like grade 5 or grade 6.
Was there any other drug that you were on?
No.
Just that, and then you started using drugs in your adulthood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually did not smoke weed till I was like 20, so that was like, I
so weed is definitely not
after. I did ecstasy because I'm like, I want to try everything, which I'm told is kind of a weird thing. And I also never really enjoyed smoking pot either.
Okay.
But
it's not the same high as well.
No. Okay. I will eat mushrooms, I would eat mushrooms like people smoke pot. Like I take that and that lets me chill out. And I'm also told that's insanely weird, but so be it.
So you mentioned that you were in a bit of a financial crisis to support your habit.
Yes and no. Like, I wouldn't really call it a crisis. I wasn't going to starve to death. After I left work in an ambulance, definitely, because my money got cut off.
Right.
But, like, I just had a massive amount of debt that I was not even looking at.
Right.
Whether or not you call that crisis. My bank account did get frozen. Also 2 days after I got suspended from work or left it in an ambulance. And that was simply financial, being like, hey, you haven't really paid your line of credit, so we're just going to freeze it. And which really sucked because I made like $1,300 that week. I'm like, I'm going to need this money. And they would not let me have access to my bank account until I made a payment of about $1,000. So yeah, that was a financial crisis in that I was no longer working. I had $300 and I really had to get my shit together.
Okay. So did you do any sort of ill things to get drugs, like rob, steal?
No.
None of that. Right?
When I was in rehab, there was one other dude that we're talking about. Like all these people that we're hanging out with, like they keep talking about all these horrible things they did. Like the worst thing I ever broke was my mom's heart. Everybody else would like, massive trail. It's like, oh, me too. That's what he said to me. It's just like, I mostly just broke a few hearts. I'm like, that's exactly what I did. I lied to people and I said I was a lot better than I was. But no, I supported my own habit through work. Unfortunately, I do have a bit of a conscience. Otherwise, I'd be a con artist for a living.
Okay. Interesting to know. So describe to me the rehab process. What more specifically, what made you go into rehab? Was it
I had to go to rehab so I could get my job back. I wanted to do it a year ago because I'm like, wow, my life is really falling apart. Wasn't totally in pieces at that point, but like it takes a very long time to get into. And the first 3 weeks after I left work in an ambulance and was told not to come back until I've done some kind of treatment, I literally just was going to payday loans and buying drugs and getting fucked up. And I accidentally bought meth one day, thinking it was heroin. And then I messaged basically my union reps, my now ex-girlfriend, like, I'm lying about everything. My life is in total fucking pieces. This is not going well. Do not trust me. I need to get into rehab. Because at that point I'd made the call, but you're supposed to wait till you got to call back and they give you a telephone interview. And after a telephone interview, you got an interview in person. And after that, you get put on a wait list. And doing this in Toronto, 3.5 weeks in from being suspended from work with nothing to do other than sit around either getting fucked up or wishing I was getting fucked up or pretending I'm being normal for my ex. I gave up on that, went back to North Bay where I got put on. I'm sorry, I might not be answering your question correctly, but yeah. I spent 6 days withdrawing from everything, not eating, going from my mom's bed because like my brother looks after her house for her. So I was staying in her room, going from my mom's bed to the bathtub, to my mom's bed, to the bathtub for 6 days. And then finally, I walked down to a community counseling center. They referred me to a doctor there who put me on Suboxone, and I started feeling completely normal again after taking it.
Okay.
Once I had established that I was now seeing a doctor who specializes in addictions, work would pay me my sick time, so money wasn't such a terrible factor. And it was a matter of killing time while I waited to get into the treatment center.
Okay. So you spent some time trying to get into the treatment center because you said it was a wait list.
Oh, yeah.
So after you got in there, like how long was the treatment? Like, was it a couple months?
The program is generally 90 days. I ended up staying 95. I was hoping to be out of there after like 70 days when I first went in, but like most of the change in my mindset happened in the last 5 weeks, and I would not trade that experience for $1 million fucking dollars.
What happened when you?
They basically got through enough to my thinking and be like, no, the way you look at the world is the problem.
Yeah.
Like it's the amount of stress that I would generate worrying about things that I simply had either no control over.
Yeah.
Or did have control over and wasn't exercising it was astounding. Like I would literally worry day in and day out about things I couldn't know or things I didn't know or things I had no power over. Like I thought I could read people's minds in that, like I would look at them and know what they were thinking. Like, and generally I had a very negative worldview in that, like I generally thought that people hated me. Everywhere I'm like, that guy's looking at me with disgust. That person fucking hates me. They're all fucking judging me. Not true at all.
Yeah.
I cannot read people's minds. Some of them would be thinking about it, but ultimately I wouldn't know. And even the ones that wouldn't be any of my fucking business anyways. Like I have no idea what people are thinking. I should stop trying to figure out what they're thinking. I can literally just walk up to them and talk to them and find out. These are not things I did till like 5 weeks ago.
Okay. So that is a spill off of your original social skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. So rehab lasted 90 days, 95 days for you.
Yeah.
Did you have to stay there the whole time? Were you in a facility?
Yeah.
And
we would leave to go to yoga and we could go out on weekends, always in pairs.
Yeah.
Some people were a bit more liberal with what they did with that. There's one guy that every time we'd leave with him, he would just fuck off and we had no idea where he went.
Oh, wow.
And we'd be like, wow, we can't really tell them about this because then we lose our weekend privileges because we're letting this guy just fuck off. But then he'd be like, why don't you guys want to hang out with us? Like, because you literally just fuck off every time we go out. That affects us.
Yeah. Understood. So what are some of the treatments they give you in rehab besides yoga and stuff? Were there medications? Were they what?
I was on Suboxone when I was in there.
Yeah.
There is a doctor there that takes care of everyone's prescriptions. When you mean treatment, like,
well, you're off the substances,
yes.
Right? So the 95 days you spent in there must have done some good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what the recovery process is,
It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Like they take an assessment of all the things that you kind of lack on, like your character defects.
Yeah.
For me, procrastination was a huge thing. Assertive communication, which is basically like, hey, you're really stepping and walking all over me. I would just let people do it. I would.
Yeah.
Don't do that. See, I'm assertively communicating that was fucking weird. Before I'd just pretend that was cool.
Yeah.
It's totally cool, actually. One of the other ones that a lot of people have anger problems. That was not one of mine, but they specifically find out all your character defects, which lead you to living a pretty miserable life that you want to self-medicate with drugs. They'd be like, hey, you can just work on these things. And they show you how to do it.
Okay.
So like learning to say no to people was a huge thing. Learning I couldn't read people's minds was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Learning to do things when I'm supposed to do them. Still don't do it nearly as much as I should, but I'm working on that as well.
So could someone who's a drug user literally walk off the street, go see a doctor and say, I need help?
But it's a very long process and there's a massive waiting list.
Okay.
Like people had this idea when I left work that I wasn't in treatment 3 weeks later, that I was clearly fucking up, which I was, but I was fucking up while I was waiting to get into treatment.
Right.
It does take a very long time to get in, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without my brother. I wouldn't have been able to do it unless I could go back to North Bay where I just had no drugs around me. Because trying to navigate a bureaucratic nightmare when you're strung out is fucking impossible.
Okay.
I'm not going to say impossible, but I couldn't have done it on my own.
Fair enough. So while we're on the subject, so there must be like a support line or something, a support system you said in this case you went to North Bay.
Yeah.
You had your brother there. There was no drugs around.
Yeah.
All right. So for an abuser in Toronto, do you think it's hard for them to do what you did?
Absolutely. Yeah. They can go to detox, and you'll see a lot of people go to detox and just stay in there till they can get into a treatment center.
Yeah.
But I can't speak to that experience. I have not been through it. But like, I definitely would have died if I had to do some of the shit that other people had to do to get into that place. Like, I'm a very fragile, weak human being. I've discovered the amount of resilience that some of these drug addicts have is fucking astounding. Okay. Apologies for the language. Yeah, I'm working on that as well. Okay. Not very well, clearly, but.
All right. So are you, what's after rehab? Is there like a mentoring program? Is there like a follow-up? Do you have
there's aftercare twice a week. The rehab that I went to is in Hamilton. It's kind of hard for me to get there with my work schedule, but I go there and hang out. I still go meet with my counselor. I email her. I send her every week what I'm going to do that week. I've only done that 3 times so far, but I'm trying to keep up with it and be like, hey, these are the things I need to get done to get my life in order or to continue to get in order. And if I don't do them, she's like, hey, why didn't you do these things? And just having to explain yourself to someone every week or send those things to people holds me accountable that I'm actually doing them.
That's good. That's good. So could you switch it? Like you said, you work in Toronto.
Yeah.
Your counselor is in Hamilton.
I'm debating just moving there because having an entire support network around you is probably one of the most important things. So
could you like get a counselor in Toronto?
Probably, but I don't think I would want to switch counselors. The woman that's been helping me has been amazing in every regard possible. Like she would not jam what I should do down my throat, but just subtly nudge me in the right direction.
That's good.
Because people need to come to a lot of these realizations on their own. You can't just tell them they're not a piece of shit. They're going to think they're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
She would just subtly influence me like, hey, well, maybe you're not that terrible, or maybe try this thing. And you do it and you'd be like, hey, there's something to this. But there were realizations that had to come from within. Like, it's called self-help for a reason. The entire idea of bettering yourself. Okay. People can't just tell you how to be better.
So did you have to like change the friends that you keep because of this?
Yes and no. I'm having a very hard time setting a lot of boundaries with a lot of people that really do not have my best interests at heart.
Okay.
That's part of the pushover thing, which I'm still working on. And I'm also painfully naive. But most of my friends that I would call friends now are people that I met at the rehab in Hamilton that live in a support network entirely around there. And like, I want to move there and live there. I need to get money together and get a car. But these are very, very, what would be the word? Like, these are not complete barriers for me. Like, these are just things that I can do the next month or two.
Okay.
I'm still fresh out of rehab, by the way.
So what advantages after rehab do you have? Does the government give you assistance to help with this? Like the transportation? Because that's a pretty far distance you have to travel both ways.
I still have a job. I was on long-term disability and I collected all of that like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Or sorry, I guess it'd be 5 weeks ago now. So no, I'm pretty set financially at the moment.
Yeah.
There are other people that they move into the supportive housing around the thing, which is basically a sober living house with 7 people.
Yeah.
And they live off of OW, which is Ontario Works Program, which I guess is the welfare that they're calling it now.
Yeah.
And they stay there and they get their life together because it takes a long time to get over these things and to actually get your life together.
Yeah.
It was quicker for me because objectively, I did not ruin my life nearly to the extent that a lot of my brothers and, well, just brothers, it was an all-male place in Hamilton did. It was easier for me to get my shit together because I still had a job. I still had a support network.
Okay.
Everyone there has a support network, but I still had family that cared about me. I didn't burn too many bridges because I didn't burn too many people.
Okay, that's good. So backtracking a bit, right? Were you pressured by friends? Was peer pressure a factor?
No.
No.
I got past that phase and started doing drugs and smoking long after I should have been in the clear.
Okay.
It literally just happened that someone gave me a pill of ecstasy and I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing my entire life.
You just went from there.
Yeah. It literally removed every insecurity I had for about an hour. Okay. And I was just like, I had no idea I was capable of doing these things. So in that regards, drugs are very good for getting rid of limited beliefs. Like I just thought I was completely undesirable, unattractive. I thought women hated me. And a lot of this stuff comes from high school because I was pretty fucking ugly till I was about 17. And I wouldn't be able to admit these things until like a month ago. And they're just like, yeah, literally everybody struggles with these things.
Yeah, everyone does. Everyone has their own struggles and whatnot. So after rehab, now you're out of rehab, you're seeing your counselor, you're doing well. Is there any urges or temptations?
All the fucking time.
Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do to stay clean?
I call people first thing in the morning because like the worst cravings I get is right when I wake up, because for a very long time my day consisted, or the 2 years after I was divorced and living on my own, my day would start. I would wake up, I would order drugs, and I would not get out of bed until those drugs got there. Like, so when I wake up in the same apartment building, the first thing that goes through my mind is I need drugs to start doing that. And then it's like, well, actually I don't. So now I get up, I cook breakfast, I do YouTube yoga, I go swimming, and generally that starts my day, and that's enough. When it's not, I call people, and when that's not enough, I get the fuck out of Toronto and head to Hamilton.
Very nice, very nice. So besides breaking your mom's heart, what's your biggest regret of doing drugs?
Breaking my ex-girlfriend's heart, being married for a very long time when the relationship clearly wasn't working, lying to her, stringing her along. The finances kind of suck, but again, money isn't super important. So basically the 10 years of my life that I wasted working a job that I hated and doing drugs to cope with working a job that I hated.
Okay. Are you still doing that job now?
For the meantime.
Okay. But I mean, in the future.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
They challenged a lot of the limited beliefs that I had. Like I thought I just did not do well in school. But when I look back on it, like I took electrical engineering, which is something I had zero interest in. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't show up to class. I was also going away to school for the first time. And I spent all my time getting drunk and hanging out with friends who, first time in my life, I'm like, wow, I feel slightly accepted. And I have all these drugs, which help me feel accepted. So yeah, of course I was destined to fail. I took something I didn't like in an environment that was entirely foreign to me. I had no self-esteem, no fucking confidence. Yeah. I was set up to fail out of that. I do remember when I signed up for this course, because my mom was pretty adamant I take something. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure if I go to school for this, I will just fail out. And she's like, well, no, I believe in you. Go do it. And then I went and failed out. I had no interest in doing it. So I always had the regret of wasting my parents' money to go do it. Okay. Oh, poor me. I had an education paid for that I squandered. So I do realize that's kind of infuriating to hear, but either way, that is what I did. And I always really regretted it, but I'm like, I never took something I cared about.
Would you consider going back and actually taking something?
I've already had plans to, yes.
Okay. What
I'm going to take psychology.
Nice.
Because figuring out what's in people's fucking heads, despite the fact I can't read their minds, I can still make assumptions, and it's pretty fun to do.
And you seem to articulate yourself pretty well.
Thank you.
You know, I really respect that. That's pretty good.
Minus all the F-bombs. I'm working
on those, right? Right. That's a work in progress.
It's called growth.
Exactly. So you mentioned when you were growing up, you had an interest in music, and
that actually happened when I was like 20. So
okay. So still young.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
33.
Okay.
I think. Maybe 34. September 12th, 1985. I don't feel like doing the math. I think I'm 34, actually.
Yeah. 35. Yeah, you're 33. So you read books now in your spare time, and you still play the guitar?
Yeah.
That's like your yoga and your stress relief. Is that part of your whole recovery process? That
and codependence is just a huge thing. And I'm pretty sure in another 6 months of yoga, I'll be able to suck my own dick. So
Jesus Christ.
No, it is hugely stress relieving. And it's good exercise.
Oh, wow.
I've been wanting to use that joke for like 3 months. It is a joke.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Well, you know what? I hope so. You're a funny guy, man.
Thank you.
But stick to playing the guitar, though.
Oh, ouch! I prefer piano.
That's good. Yeah, I know I can't stop laughing. Oh man. well, we have a lot of people that like that comment, man. You're laughing too, man. Yeah, man. But you know what? That's good. I'm glad to see that you're recovering and you have a pretty strange sense of humor. But it's funny.
Yeah, I'm confident in it for the first time.
That's good. That's good. See, well, rehab, you know, did a lot for you. It worked on your weaknesses, and you know.
Oh, the entire world does that. They actually teach you not to care about that in rehab, because you know what changes when someone comes up to me and be like, you are a fucking crackhead. Yeah. You look at your life, everything that you have, the people you care about, and someone comes up to you and calls you a crackhead. What has changed about your circumstances or your life? Literally nothing.
Yeah.
Someone just said something to you, and you actually don't have to let that bother you, because people are always going to do it. And the other thing they teach you is like, this came to me because like in my one-on-ones with my counselor, I would be bitching about all these people, and she'd be like, well, often we look at other people because we spot something in ourselves, and that's why it's so recognized. And like, yeah, Carlene, I know what projection is. How could I be doing it if I know what it is? And after a while, I did start realizing that all the people I was making fun of, that was something I felt insecure about myself. And I just need to remind myself, oh, I'm better than this person. I'm better than this person. Yeah. So if I'm doing it, that's probably why other people are doing it to me. So now when people at work are kind of dicks to me, I just think to myself like, wow, that's kind of sad. The amount of self-hatred that it takes to put people down to feel better about yourself. For them, it's coming from a hurt place. And that makes it really not bother me to the extent it used to.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because those things are things that people struggle with.
Yeah.
And you know, are thinking the big picture.
Yeah.
Now you can see that. You can see
I did not people and figure these things out till like literally 6 or 7 weeks ago.
Well, that's good. That's good. That, you know, a lot of good has come out of it.
Yeah.
Now you can think past these things and won't let them get you down. As well, you don't have to take ecstasy to feel important, right?
Yeah. When I really did, this is something that actually happened in there, was like when I put all this weight down, when I really acknowledged my faults in a room full of people, and all it takes is one person looking at you being like, man, I feel the exact same way. Yeah. You stop feeling like your problems are terminally unique. You stop being like, oh my God, I'm so much different than everyone else. Everyone struggles with the exact same shit. Just no one's admitting it. Yeah. And I did feel like my insecurities evaporate over the course of about 3 or 4 days when I just went back through my life and all the times that I let other people tell me certain things about myself and I just accepted them rather than be like, hey, you know what? I don't feel that's true. Yeah. And it felt like I took ecstasy. I went downstairs. I'm like, this feels like ecstasy. I was in a treatment center, so they drug tested me and I passed, but it wasn't that like I felt like I wanted to hug everything and was sweating buckets on the floor, but it was just a complete absence of fear and insecurity for the first time in my life, sober. And that felt great. Felt like ecstasy.
That's good, man. You know, and I can feel a positive energy, you know, radiating off of you right now. That's pretty good.
It wasn't when I came in. I was nervous as fuck.
Yeah, you were. You were actually. No, you're just, you know.
It still comes back, the insecurity, but like,
you can deal with it better now, right?
You're breathe. I can meditate. I can do yoga. I can. What works the best is just getting in a decent conversation and starting to lose yourself in it. Because there's still moments where I'm like, I need to sound smart. I'm like, no, I don't. I just need to say what I'm actually fucking thinking.
Yeah. That's good.
Minus all the F-bombs. Sorry.
It's a work in progress. Work in progress. No, well, someone says your F-bombs are top notch. So.
Weapons grade.
No. So you obviously had to, in your case, you had to do drugs to get into a rehab and, you know, get exposed to certain things that you have now.
Oh, I wish this was everywhere. I want my brother to take up heroin so we can come there.
Well, hopefully not. But what I'm saying, though, I think this experience can translate into someone. Everyone has their problems.
Yeah.
Yours, it was a drug problem.
Yeah.
Like everyone has life problems that can make them feel a certain type of way, make them feel down, make them bring other people down. Something like a group therapy class or something to work on their insecurities. Would you recommend that to someone?
Absolutely. Like the stuff that they teach in that place should be taught in high school.
Yeah.
Like it is astounding the amount of problems that people have that are just miscommunications. Because this would happen too. I would go on a massive tangent about someone else, and my counselor like the first conflicts I had was with another one of her guys. Like, hey, maybe you just talk to him and explain your side of it. He's like, what? I'm not doing that. All right. That's fucking weak. And he would be doing the same thing, I would imagine. I never got confirmation about this. And every week she would look at us both and be like, hey, maybe just try talking to these people. And when you talk to them, you realize that most of the things that you're saying that they're thinking or saying they're doing, they're not actually doing that. It has nothing to do with you. It's a miscommunication. And you've generated so much stress just because you're afraid to simply talk to somebody. That is crazy.
Yeah, it is. And we all walk around with our burdens and everything. And, you know, just reaching out to someone, just talking to someone. Yeah. You meet a complete stranger in the elevator and say hi.
Yeah.
You know, that can change your day, the mood of your day for the rest of the day.
Oh,
you know,
I've noticed that as well. Yeah. Like the cashier who works at the Hasty Mart by my house, like 3 times I just said hello to him, was nice, tried to make the guy laugh. Yeah. And now he looks fucking happy when I walk in. And I'm in a good mood too. Yeah. And it does not take much to just not be an asshole to people. It doesn't take anything at all, actually. Yeah. It's the easiest thing to do in the world. And I'm astounded it took me till 33 before I'm like, hey, maybe putting people down constantly, but doing it because it's funny. Like that was the other thing that I really regret is I would always make fun and alienate people being like, well, it's okay because what I'm doing is funny. And it's just like, well, basically what I'm saying is that if people can't do it in a way that's entertaining, then I'm basically the only one with a license to put people down. No wonder everyone fucking hated me. Like that, the day I left the rehab, half the people that like they give you like your goodbye speech and they tell you what they think about you. Half the people who I thought were my friends for the first 2 months were like, man, I hated you so much. Yeah. I couldn't say anything to you because you would come back with reasons why I was wrong or stupid. And I just didn't want that. And they all really liked me on my way out because I started learning about all these things, like coming to the terms with the fact that I was a huge asshole to a lot of people and very dismissive and insulting. I stopped doing these things and surprise, surprise, suddenly I felt welcome and tolerated and happy. Sorry if I'm getting a little off track there, but it is astounding to me that it did. I always kind of suspected I was an asshole, but I did not realize the full extent of my douchedom till like 5 weeks ago. And surprisingly, my life has gotten a lot better when I stopped doing these things or started doing them a lot less or catching myself doing them. Like it just serves no purpose other than to inflate my own purpose to make fun of people or inflate my own self-image, which it literally does nothing for me.
And another comment coming for you, man.
Thank you.
Someone said, "Yo, tell them I love how honest you." They
do this thing in there where it's like everyone goes around the room and writes something nice about you because surprise, surprise, self-esteem is pretty low in drug addicts. Yeah. And I got honest twice, which is very rare at a treatment center. Yeah. Felt good about that. But I also got cold and calculating. And it took me 5 days. I'm like, that's actually a good thing to look at things emotionally detached and be like, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. That's good, man. I like the way you articulate yourself, but that's pretty good.
I also got cab driver, which made no sense to me. How is that a quality? I don't drive a fucking cab.
I don't know. You know what? Maybe you're fun to talk to because when people go in cabs, they usually talk to a cab driver. A cab driver is an unofficial therapist. Because he has to drive them to this and listen to people, what he likes on that. So I'm guessing you listen to people.
Yeah, maybe I'll try driving a cab. Seriously, I love talking to people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned that like as a third born child in a family, I'm what's called a mascot child, and I'm very attention seeking, disorganized. Like a lot of my good qualities and a lot of my bad qualities. Yeah. A lot of it comes down to your birth order, or they allude to that. Like obviously not everything's set in stone, but you're like, this is like astrology. People just assign, but then you look at it like, oh my God, this is me to a fucking T. Wow. And they explain why people adopt these roles in families. And as like the third born, I was also a peacemaker, which is where the pushover thing comes from, and the constant need for attention. And I'm like, oh, I can just work on these things.
Okay. So what I want to ask you, do you think there's a link between mental health and drug addiction?
Yeah. It's self-medicating for a lot of anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Alcoholism is definitely mostly social anxiety that people are self-medicating for. I would notice this when I'd get out. Like if I walk by a bar, I'd want to drink, but if the bar was empty, I wouldn't want to drink. So that tells me that alcohol is just a way of alleviating social anxiety.
Yeah.
And every time I get a craving to go for a beer, I just know I need to be around people. Like that is the need that I need to be met.
Yeah.
There are other aspects, like my drug of choice was painkillers, which let me work insanely long hours. So I could ignore the physical effects of that and would have the energy to do it, and would also feel pretty great about myself. But that's why it was my drug of choice. Oxy is kind of weird from the opiate family. It's made from theobromine, which comes out of the poppy, and it's both a stimulant and an opiate. So it's basically a prescribed speedball.
So you're not only was a drug user, you know about the drugs.
And then I went ahead and did them anyway. So don't tell me I'm intelligent.
Well, you did your research.
I'm insecure and can't take a compliment. This gets addressed in rehab as well. Sorry, I cut you off.
No worries, no worries. So were there like the question that I asked, were there like you think there's a link between drug addiction and mental health?
Yeah.
From your in your rehab, a lot of people who were there, did they have mental health issues?
Yes. And most of them were dealing with major trauma from their childhood. Like they're people who came from really fucked up environments.
Yeah.
So it honestly made me feel pretty bad because I had what was called big T trauma, which is where you can look at, I was stomped by 5 people. I had a divorce in my childhood. Like there's child traumas that happen in childhood, and the more you have of them, exponentially, like if you have one of them, it's very unlikely to be a drug habit. If you have 5 of these things happening in your childhood, the odds of you becoming an addict go up by like 14,000%. It's called the ACE test, and you can look at it, and it's pretty astounding. It's just like once a bunch of bad things happen to you as a kid, the odds you become a drug addict fucking skyrocket. I didn't have too many of them. Yeah. I mostly was just bullied a shit ton, and that made me super fucking scared. And I was terrified of women, which made me super fucking scared. And I had an asshole older brother who was also bullied a ton, and he would re-victimize me. So there's never a moment where I felt secure in my childhood, because I would either be at home being tormented by my brother, or at school being tormented by kids, and also doing a lot of the tormenting, because that's what we do as a society, is just re-victimize people. But I would not acknowledge that. It's sorry, a little off topic.
No, go ahead.
I can't even remember what the question was. Like mental health, and like a lot of these mental health images are just people being terrified, and anxiety defense mechanisms. Like hypervigilance is trying to get everything right so that no one can blame you. Like if you had an abusive parent, I didn't, but if you did, you would make sure everything was right all the time, so you wouldn't have an excuse to lose his shit on you and beat the shit out of you. So that's where hypervigilance comes from, which is constantly just trying to make sure everything is fine. That creates a lot of anxiety, because it's fucking impossible to make sure nothing goes wrong. But people carry that all throughout their life.
Yeah, and it will eventually affect them. Yeah. And you know, to do drugs.
That's the anxiety aspect of it, and it's one example. Like, there's so many things that cause anxiety, but it's just trying to control the uncontrollable. Yeah. I think, at least. Okay.
So no, since you're no longer doing drugs, I assume your finances are back where they should be. You know, have control of your bank account.
That has more to do with the fact that all my LTD came in at the last minute. Like I filed it way late, which is good, because if I had it right away, I would have got out of there after 8 weeks, being like, I don't need a roof over my head, or like I needed to stay there.
Yeah.
Because I had no money coming in, and I would have left as soon as possible. And most of the real work got done in like my last 5 weeks there, because that was when I accepted that my thinking was broken. And it all started with just learning I can't read people's minds. It's just like, okay, if this thing that I thought I could always do, or read people's moods and know, turns out I was generally wrong every time I made assumptions about what other people were thinking.
Well, they said assumptions are you making an ass out of yourself, right?
Yeah. I would do it all the time and just not tell people. I just assumed I knew what they were thinking about me. Turns out I was wrong literally every time. I'm like, well, what else about my thinking is wrong? And I would start challenging every thought that came out of my head. Like cognitive behavioral therapy is just like looking at situations and being like, what I'm thinking is not rational. Like, if I was walking and someone would be in my way, I'd be like, what the fuck is this person doing in my way? But it's like, that person doesn't even know I'm there. This has nothing to do with me. I'm actually not that important. And even that's an irrational thought. My level of importance has nothing to do with this situation. I could be the sole owner of Cuba. That person is still going to be in my way. It's not going to matter. Why am I getting mad? And then you realize you're getting mad over fucking nothing. So
true. Well, you did go through a lot. You're obviously a very intelligent person.
Thank you.
And I highly respect that. And your honesty and the way you carry yourself, especially in an open forum like this, people really loving it.
I'm trying to dial it back a little bit and be a bit more calm. Like, there was a really good moment where I had all these revelations about my life and living it in fear, and I got super happy, and I said it felt like ecstasy. I told the doctor there, and I was coming off my Suboxone, which just slows your central nervous system, and he's just like, do you have a history of mania? And I was just like, wait, what? And he's like, mania, like manic depressive. Do you have a history of this? I'm like, ADHD. And he's like, why? So it's like, well, you're telling me that you feel like you took drugs. Maybe you've been self-medicating for manic depressive your entire life. You're coming off the Suboxone. And I spent an entire day worried that like all these changes in my life was just mental illness. And then I realized that I was doing another thing that cognitive behavioral therapy teaches you called catastrophizing, which is where you think it's going to be the worst possible thing and you worry about it day in and day out. And I talked to the guy that runs the place, who's actually a psychiatrist. And I'm like, what does mania look like? And he's just like, why are you asking? And I explained to him that the doctor told me that I might just be manic and I might have been self-medicating for that my entire life. He's just like, well, you do talk insanely fast when you're excited about something. And people are going to think you're crazy crazy wasn't the word he used, but like you're going to turn off people completely if they can't understand what you're saying. So maybe slow down your speech a bit. And then I was like, I should probably wash my clothes too, so I smell less crazy. And it's just like, yes. The doctor was also like, well, have you ever spent the entire night just up writing in journals that make no sense or writing symphonies that make no sense? I was like, my music's not that bad, sir. But the next week when I talked to him, I just made an honest, conceited effort to just speak slower, be calmer, not smell crazy. And he was very surprised to find out that it wasn't mental illness and that cognitive behavioral therapy created such a switch in my attitude. But it was literally just accepting I could be wrong about one thing. I'm probably wrong about a lot of things.
Yeah, that's generally how it is. And you don't sound crazy to me at all. Just
Thank you. I worry about it, but again, I can't read your mind.
Yeah, man. What would you like to share? What positive message would you like to share to our viewers from given the stuff that you went through in your life recently?
Everyone is a product of their conditioning. Like, people made us the way we are.
Yeah.
So when you accept that, it becomes a lot easier to forgive people who are being really, really shitty, because if they're really shitty, generally someone was really shitty to them.
Yeah.
And when you can forgive people, you don't spend all day mad at them. And when you're mad, you create a stress response in your body. It gets ready to fight things. Stress will kill you. So you should literally forgive everyone for the simple fact that it will calm you down and create less stress. And you also can connect with people a lot more when you don't judge them.
Yeah.
Like the first guy that figured out you should literally forgive everyone became so popular so quickly, the Romans got jealous and nailed him to a cross. So your judgment may vary on this, but I think Jesus was the first guy to be like, hey, let's just not hate everybody. And that made him insanely popular to the point that we still think he is the Son of God. Whether or not he is debatable. I'm on the not camp, but I do think forgiving everybody, it doesn't mean you have to put up with them. Doesn't mean you have to keep them in your life. You can still set healthy boundaries, but just get rid of all that hate and contempt you have for everything. It serves you no purpose.
And I like that.
Thanks.
That's well said. And I think that you obviously said a lot. I do like that part of your statement resonates to me. Stress is a killer.
Yeah.
And the less you stress, the better your life can be. The better quality of life you can live.
Yeah.
Like you said, put negative things aside, say hi to people and they wouldn't say hi back.
Yeah.
But you can change the way people's mood by giving them positive influences.
Absolutely, man. And it's so simple that it's astounding. Like, I still feel stupid. It took me this long to figure this out.
But now you do, and going forward, and it looks like you're gonna do well at it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna wrap this up right now.
Thank you.
And anything you want to say, you can look straight at that camera right there and you say it. And encourage people to get help and whatnot. You want to say something to someone? You don't want to shout out or anything?
No, I will just say this. Like, if you're struggling with this, you absolutely do not need to live this way. I thought for the very longest time that, like, I would never be better. I would never be fixed. And once you put that weight down, you will never want to pick it up again. You get tempted to, but I cannot believe how good it feels just to get out of fucking bed every day.
That's good. That's good. Well said.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you a lot.
I like having platforms to ramble.
All right, good. Well, folks, we have come to the end of this show for today. I want to thank my guest, Allan Johnston, for coming here and imparting some knowledge and experience upon us. He did say some things that resonated to myself and a lot of my viewers. And we do this show every weekend on Sundays. And if this is something that you would like to see going forward, please share, like, subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
We're done?
We're done.
Right.
We're done.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah.
First 20 minutes of it was a little bit like